Hey there, beautiful soul. Welcome to the Bright Living Podcast, a podcast where we explore ways to live a luminous and bright life. In this episode, I invite you to explore together what it means for your life to become spiritual and the most common myths about spirituality. If you are on this journey, I hope the guidelines below will help you avoid confusion and have a smoother journey towards your own spirituality. Many people start a spiritual path with some expectations of how it should look like, some expectation of how or what they should become. They can sometimes feel that some things are not allowed in a spiritual journey, or they may feel wrong for starting to behave in a certain way that is absolutely and completely natural. That's why today I want to speak to you about the most common myths around spirituality that I've personally encountered in my own journey and that I've seen in people around me and people that I work with. First of all, I want to make this disclaimer that spirituality isn't something that you become. You already are spiritual. What you do is you start to explore that spirituality. You start to embody it, be more connected to it, and show it more into the world. Spirituality is getting to know yourself. So let me repeat that. You don't become spiritual. You already are. Spirituality isn't some nature that only some people can access after they meditate a lot, after they have some practices. Spirituality isn't something designed or only for specific kinds of people. And spirituality isn't something that is found outside of science. And if you study the work of Albert Einstein, this will become clearer to you. Spirituality, just as science, deals with life, is helping you understand life, and is helping you become better at life. This is why it might happen to you that things that you experience while on your spiritual journey start to be scientifically explained and you start to understand them in a scientific way. That's because even though spirituality and science tend to be perceived as contrary, they are actually one and the same. With this being said, let's go straight to the most common myths around spirituality and how one should or should not experience a spiritual journey. Actually, before we start, I want to make a disclaimer that this is just my understanding that I'm presenting right now. I do not claim to own the truth. I do not claim to bring to this episode the full truth, the ultimate truth, the whole truth. I think there is a lot more to discuss on spirituality, but what I'm sharing here is merely my experience and teachings that I've come across on my ongoing spiritual journey. Please take from this episode only what resonates and is relevant to you. Myth number 1. Spirituality is an end journey. You get somewhere, there's this enlightenment point, and as you get there, you stay there for the rest of your life, living happily ever after. I would like to challenge that. Your spirituality is much more dynamic. You can reach there without doing much work and just embody spirituality and get to an enlightenment point. Or you can do lots of work and shed many layers and get to a point where you call yourself or you think you're enlightened. You are without the burden. But no matter how you get there, the journey is always dynamic. It is an upward journey. It is a journey of shedding layers, of transcending your conditioning, but it is always dynamic. So think of spirituality as a journey for your life, and not so much as an end journey with a set point that you have to get to, and then that's it. There's no more work to be done. Of course, at some point, it can become easier to access your own spirituality, to feel connected with the divine. At some point, you have enough neural pathways that it becomes easier for you to transcend faster some trauma or something that is bothering you. Some may call that enlightenment. I suggest we call that evolution. And enlightenment shouldn't be your ultimate goal, but evolution, continuous evolution. If you focus on your own evolution, no matter the point where you are, you always have something to evolve to. And evolution can be excitement. It can be learning. Evolution doesn't have to come with the pressure of getting somewhere to be good enough. Evolution, from a spiritual point of view, is understanding that you already are enough and you're invited to connect to your own nature. Evolution is understanding your own divine nature. Evolution is moving from fear to love, is moving from stagnation to dynamism to movement. Evolution is moving from an ego perspective to more union. So as long as you're evolving, don't worry about whether or not you've become enlightened. Focus on loving your life, being absolutely in love with your own life. And the enlightenment that you're looking for will be the result. Myth number 2. Spirituality is separate from your physical world. My teacher in India used to say, you are not a physical being having a spiritual experience. You are a spiritual being having a physical experience. And I used to love that because this brings us to our spiritual nature. This brings us to our spiritual aspect as being our ultimate nature. Our physicality and the physical world is an expression of spirituality. Taking care of the physical world is an expression of our own spirituality. As we grow our spiritual world, we will start to see the physical world thrive. And as we nourish the physical world, we're going to start to see the spiritual world thrive. Physicality is the container, is the more dense expression of spirituality. And being spiritual means taking care of your own finances, of your own body, of your own nutrition. Being spiritual means being in alignment with nature. Spiritual enlightenment or evolution comes so much easier in I'm going to say sattvic body, where a sattvic body in Sanskrit terms means a radiant body, an energized body. In more scientific terms, we could say that spiritual evolution comes much easier in a well-functioning nervous system. So you may have many spiritual revelation and a connection to the divine, and that is beautiful. But as long as that connection to the divine doesn't guide you to sleep better, to drink more water, to eat food that energizes you, that nourishes you, then there's some question there. If your spiritual guidance doesn't guide you to be more grounded, to be more here, to be present and to take care of your life, then it's just escapism. Meditation, yoga, chanting, connecting to the divine does not have to be opposed to washing our dishes, keeping our finances in order, embracing our need for beauty, and enjoying all of this. To enjoy physical things, to enjoy our own body, to enjoy feeling beautiful, and to enjoy good food, tasty food, to enjoy life from all our senses is in itself a pathway to spiritual evolution. Otherwise, it is just escape, and it is fooling ourselves. It's kidding ourselves. As long as the physical pleasure is not the only source of happiness and a source of addiction, the physical world should be nourished. It shouldn't be discarded, but it should be nourished. It should be taken care of, and it will provide a pathway, a gateway to spiritual evolution. Myth number 3. To be spiritual, you have to become isolated. Now, we may start to associate spiritual evolution with some monks or people who decide to remove themselves from the natural, from the usual world, from the ordinary world, and place themselves in a cave or in a temple or somewhere where they can connect. And indeed, we might sometimes have to create some space for ourselves to connect to the divine. We might want to create some spaces that are designated just for that, that have this intention for us to connect, to be aware of our own thoughts, of our own nature, of our own soul. This space can be, for some, a temple atop of the mountain, or it can be your own room where you journal, where you have your altar. It can be your place where you hold your practice. And yes, I see the value of taking time to yourself, of being alone from time to time, to connect with your own nature. But all of that has to come from a place of embracing the world in a more authentic way, showing up in the world in a more authentic, present way that is aligned to self. Rejecting the world, discarding it, and naming it below ourselves or below our spirituality or our spiritual evolution is just arrogance. Ultimately, our purpose is to show up in the world, is to connect and be with the world. Our purpose is to be relevant, and to isolate from the world means to isolate and disconnect from life. If we are enlightened and spiritual only when we're alone and not in relationships, not in communities, not in groups, not in our family, because all of them are way below our level, this is called spiritual ego. If we have made a commitment to only spend our time with spiritual communities, only spend time in nature, but we bring no value to the world at all, or we think living in a city is non-spiritual, then this is kidding ourselves. Yes, it's important from time to time to connect to nature, to spend time, to nourish our own spirituality. This is very relevant and important. But to isolate, to no longer be of the world, means rejecting life. So be a luminous being that is showing up in the world, that is embracing everything in the mother world with boundaries, of course, with discernment. But your spirituality can include tall buildings, cities, technology, and all things that maybe one may think, no, that's too modern, that's not for me, that is taking me away from my purpose. How about you make it serve your purpose? I love Vishen Lakiani's book. It's called The Buddha and the Badass. So explore your spiritual side and stay relevant to this world, to today's world and today's society. This brings me to myth number 4. As you get to know your own spirituality, you start to feel or become superior to others, or spiritual people are superior to others. This is something that I see a lot. Oh, I don't engage with that because that's of a low vibration. It's okay to understand how the energy works, and it's okay to understand the difference between some dense energy and some lighter energy. But the fact is, the more spiritual you get, the more equal with others you start to feel, the more accepting you start to feel of others. Your spiritual evolution will make you more wise, will make you more humble. I'm coming back to that concept of spiritual ego, where because you are in a certain path in your journey, you might start to feel that you've understood more things than others. You might start to be judgmental. In reality, spirituality means you start to see the beauty, the potential of others, no matter where they are in their journey, no matter if they read the same books as you do or not, no matter if they practice the same practices like you or not. You may start to see proof of effortless spirituality, where people who may have no practice, no dedicated or declared practice, actually express naturally some values that are very evolved and very spiritual. You might start to see how spirituality shows up naturally in children as love, as play, as lightness of the heart. You may start to see that people who maybe don't read the same evolved books as you do express actually spirituality in a very different but natural way. They express intelligence. They express not so much intellect, but intelligence and connection to life. So if you are actually maturing in your spiritual evolution, you won't need to judge the value of someone or their intelligence, their capacity, based on their beliefs, their practices. You will start to see intelligence being expressed naturally, without conditioning. And when you don't see that, when you see very dense energy, you see judgment, what comes up will be love. Not judgment, but love and compassion. Myth number 5. Spirituality means you have to see always the good in everybody. This is the other extreme. If in myth 4 I was presenting to you what happens if one starts to develop a spiritual ego and think that people around them are not as good as them because they don't have the same practices or don't practice in the same way, myth number 5 is an extreme where that I've also seen a lot and have fallen into. It's a trap that I've fallen into for many times, is that as you start to see the good in everybody, you might start to disconnect from your own instinct. You might start to ignore your healthy instincts when your gut feeling tells you something is wrong, something needs to be changed, something is bothering you, and you need to address that. As one starts to see beauty and light and love in everybody, one might start to ignore some relevant action that needs to be taken or situations that you need to remove yourself from. In fact, becoming more spiritual and spiritually evolved means being more in touch with your own instincts and listening to them without much question, without second guessing yourself. And this is not fear, this is discernment. Many times I hear this. Don't be acting out of fear. Sometimes this is pure discernment to remove yourself from a situation. Being spiritual means being fierce, not just soft, understanding, containing, loving. Sometimes your spirituality will mean being fierce and intense, just as nature is, just as a fire is. In nature, we don't have just water, which is soft, flowing, containing, nurturing. We have fire, which is destroying, removing obstacles, removing toxins, protecting and warming and uplifting, giving energy. A natural and an evolved being knows when to remove itself from situations that no longer serve, that are no longer for the higher evolution. For example, let's say a stranger is approaching you, or someone comes with a proposal or a business proposal or an invitation of some sort, and you feel in your gut that it's not okay, the person doesn't have the best intention. But if you spiritually gaslight yourself, you might say, oh, no, this is just my fear, I want to see the good in everybody. When actually your instinct is telling you, remove yourself, protect yourself. And that is the relevant action to take. This has happened to me so many times in my solo travels, and my intensity and fierceness and discernment and my instinct has actually kept me safe much of the time. I didn't have to apologize if I wanted to just stop a conversation and remove myself. I didn't have to call myself judgmental just because I wanted to stop an interaction or a relationship that was hurting me. This is how I've actually managed to save a lot of energy, to stay safe in my travels, to trust myself more. And this is extremely, extremely valuable. So, my dear, spirituality doesn't mean being naive. We are beings of nature. In nature, we embrace fierceness, protection, and coming in touch with our instincts. Myth number 6. Spirituality means having a religion. As you evolve, you start to realize that having a religion is just an expression of spirituality. You may start to accept all religions, all expressions of spirituality, and you may start to identify less and less with a specific religion, but might be open to practice a form of spirituality. As we evolve, we might start to see the blind spots of some religions and see that maybe some teachings there are not based on love, are not based on evolution, but are simply based on fear. So in our practice, we might start to embrace just some things and discard other things that maybe don't serve us. When you realize that spirituality doesn't have anything to do with dogma, you are free to explore your own spirituality in your own way without needing or without feeling the need to attach yourself to a certain religion. Also, you might start to feel less threatened about practicing elements from more religions at the same time. And you may start to realize that different religions are not in competition. They are just expressions of one culture's spirituality. And finally, myth number 7. Spiritual people are always calm, always settled. Now, this is a funny one, because no matter how much you're embracing your spiritual nature, at the end of the day, you are human. And as a human, you are going to have a human experience. In the human experience, there are thoughts, there are emotions. In the human experience, there are polarities, which you might explore and express at different times. If you hold an expectation of yourself to always be calm, always be settled just because you are in this spiritual journey, then you are rejecting a part of you that is feeling. And to feel is to allow the emotion to have a peak and then flow. Allow yourself to discover that in your spiritual understanding, you can include emotions. Feel those emotions. Actually, you might feel even more intensely. Being detached from your emotions doesn't mean suppressing your emotion, bringing it somewhere, pushing it somewhere deep down. Being detached from your emotion is embracing your emotion, allowing it to rise in your body, and then allowing it to flow naturally. And you may discover that in your evolution, all emotions are allowed, and your fierceness is allowed. As someone who is spiritual, you won't always be calm and settled, because sometimes a relevant way to feel is fierce. Just as fire is useful, your intensity is also useful. The difference here is that you won't believe that your emotions are your ultimate reality. Being wise, you will wait the emotion out, you will experience it, feel it, give it a vessel, give it a way out. You will lean into it. You will be curious about it, but you will not take action from it. You will wait that peak out and then take action. This is what people mean by being detached, is understanding that a strong emotion doesn't define your reality and might cloud your wisdom. And with this knowledge, you embrace it, you feel it, you stay with it, you're curious about it, and you watch it flow away. You move it and you watch it move in your body. Thank you for listening so far, and let me know in the comments, how is it that you are experiencing your own spiritual evolution? Did you come across any of these myths? Do let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for being here, and don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and be in tune with the next episodes. So much gratitude, and see you next time.